High pass filters. We've used them, we've abused them, but what are they? What are they doing? And how do they work? Let's take a look at a high pass filter. You may call this a low cut. That is what it does, but that's not what it's called. It's a high pass filter. Let's take a look at Pro Q3. I have a high pass filter here. We call it a high pass filter because it lets the high frequencies pass. And yes, it does cut the low frequencies, not by attenuating certain frequencies, by filtering them. Let's take a closer look. This is a 100 hertz high pass filter with a 6 decibel per octave slope. So what that means is every doubling of frequencies or halving of frequencies is an octave. And what we would expect is a 6 decibel difference in the amplitude at each successive octave. Does that make sense? Is that a thing? So just by looking at this, we can see already that this corner frequency of 100 hertz is not a brick wall. There are frequencies above 100 hertz that are being affected, even though this is just a 100 hertz filter. And obviously, the frequencies below 100 hertz are definitely being affected. At 100 hertz, I just added a bell filter just to compare, according to the graphical representation that FabFilter is giving us, if that is to be trusted. At the corner frequency, 100 hertz, it looks like we're actually reducing 100 hertz by 3 dB. Interesting. If we go to half of that frequency, 50 hertz, that's an octave lower. We're actually getting about 7 dB less energy. An octave above 100 hertz, we're still getting negative 1 dB. And 400 hertz, an octave above that, about a quarter of a dB. This is about as gentle a slope as you're going to find on a high pass filter, 6 dB per octave. And what's interesting about this is if you look at the way the frequencies around the corner frequency are being affected, we can use this as a tone shaping filter. It doesn't, you usually think of high pass filters as carving away the rumble from low frequencies that are getting captured by a microphone that you just don't need, or super sub information on a bass DI or something like that. But we can actually use this and we can move into the territory of audible sound without totally destroying a track. And sometimes I'll use this to shape the bottom end of a track, and I'll go kind of high with this corner frequency, but I'm using just a 6 dB per octave filter. Switch over here to an 18 dB per octave filter. Now this is a pretty steep slope. If we look again, according to the graph that we're given, at 100 hertz, I'm seeing again a 3 dB reduction. What's interesting about that? Well, if we go back to our 6 dB per octave filter, at the corner frequency, we were also reducing 3 dB. Let's take a look at an octave above 100 hertz on the 18 dB filter. It's almost back to zero. If we zoom way in, it's not quite flattened out by 200 hertz, but I'm guessing it's about negative 0.075 dB. If we zoom back out and go down the octave to 50 hertz, there's our negative 18. So slope is something to keep in mind. If you think of a high pass filter as this brick wall that's going to eliminate any low frequency rumble or artifacts that you don't want in your mix, you have to consider the slope, because as you can see with this 6 dB filter, even though the filter is set at 100 hertz, we're still getting a lot of 50 hertz through. A whole octave below the corner frequency, we're only seeing a difference of 5 dB. It's not eliminating all frequencies below the corner. That's why this 6 dB filter can be very gentle. And again, you can take it up a lot higher than a steep filter like 18 dB per octave. Both of these filters are reducing 3 dB at 100 hertz, but the 6 dB filter is affecting 50 hertz a lot less, and it's reaching up to 200 hertz more, even up to 400 hertz. Whereas this steeper 18 dB per octave filter, barely touching 200 hertz at all. It's really not affecting 400 hertz. And 50 hertz is getting really filtered out. 25 hertz. What does that look? 25 hertz. Yeah, 25 hertz, you're probably expecting 36 dB to be shaved off. And is it there? Yes, 25 hertz is still going to be there. It's just going to be 36 dB less of 25 hertz. So keep that in mind as you're choosing your slopes for stacked instruments in a mix. You could still have buildup of frequencies that you may think you've high passed. You may need to high pass them a little bit lower with a steeper slope. Or maybe you can even use a gentler slope at a higher frequency to control the low mids and high pass at the same time. The gentler 6 dB per octave slope is going to have less of an effect on phase relationships between your tracks. The way that EQ bands work is by shifting phase, actually. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not the expert on that. But don't be fooled. All EQ is causing phase shift. It's not always a bad thing. That's how EQ works. And that's just why you don't want steep high-pass filters all over the place at different frequencies on a multi-mic'd set of channels.